Hi everybody! You might be approaching the end of your financial year and it's the perfect time to get your Sage 50 accounts in order. The year-end process itself is simple. It doesn't matter if you're a seasoned pro or if it's your first time, it's just a few steps in the wizard. But before you dive in, there are some important checks and housekeeping tasks that will just make everything run smoothly. Things like archiving your company data just keeps it organised and improves performance. We'll show you how to create an archive and why it's a good habit. Then there's backing up your data, which is essential before making any changes, and we'll share best practice just to ensure your backups are reliable. And avoid accidental postings into a closed period by setting a lock date. It's quick to do and it saves headaches later. We'll also guide you through the year-end wizard as well, step by step, so you can complete the process with confidence. If you need to tidy up older unused records, we'll show you how to do that as well in our Delete Your Records webinar. And then we'll also cover how to clear the audit trail. It can help speed things up and we'll explain when it's appropriate and how to do that safely. So to help you to prepare, we're hosting a series of live webinars throughout January and February. These sessions will give you practical tips and demonstrations so you feel confident about your year end and keep your accounts in great shape. Don't miss this opportunity to start the new year with clean, organised data and peace of mind. Make sure you reserve your spot today at sage.co.uk/webinars, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Hi everyone, it's that time again when you might be starting to think about your year end. The year end process itself is straightforward. It's a simple wizard that includes a few options. However, before this, there's the preparation stage, ensuring you've posted everything, and of course, it involves running reports. But do you understand your reports and also the opportunities that you have to develop them? Ensuring they're accurate, but also that they provide you with a correct level of detail. Throughout January and February, we're running a series of live webinars to help develop your knowledge and understanding of the management reports available in Sage 50 accounts. We'll be starting with the basics, understanding nominal records and the structure of the nominal ledger. This is also ideal if you need to create new nominal codes. Following on from this, we'll examine the chart of accounts, looking at all aspects, including adding new layouts and editing existing ones. Our attention then turns to the management reports themselves, the trial balance, the profit and loss, and of course the balance sheet. We'll explain how to run them, what they show, and most importantly, how the figures calculate. We want you to be confident. On the management report session, one of the most common scenarios we're asked about is where you haven't yet run your year end, but need to generate a profit and loss report for your next financial year. We've got your back with this and have a specific webinar that explores the options you have available, whether it's running reports for your new financial year or even a previous one. The last webinar in the series looks at reconciling your age debtors and age creditor reports at year end, ensuring that the balances agree with the figures on your trial balance and the balance sheet. Of course, this could be done at any time, such as part of your month-end process. So come along and we'll demonstrate what to check and how to run them to ensure everything agrees. If you'd like to attend any or all of these sessions to help develop your knowledge and boost your confidence, then simply head along to sage.co.uk/webinars and register for your free place. These, along with loads of other topics, including how to run your year end, are available. See you soon.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Michael. I'm going to be your host for this morning's session. Hopefully you had a chance to watch those two little videos there that we've created, just to give you an idea of what we've got coming up over the next month or two. Today, though, we're looking at VAT return. It's part one. So we're looking at the VAT return wizard and the steps to prepare and reconcile. So there's 3 tabs in that wizard. and we're going to be running through essentially tab 1, which is the prepare, and tab 2, which is the reconcile. In the part 2 session, we're covering that final tab, the third tab, which is all about completing your VAT return and getting it submitted online. So that will be on Friday morning, part 2, I think it is. If you can't attend it, there is a recording already of that one available. Right, now before we get stuck into this morning's webinar, just quickly run you through a little bit of housekeeping, just in case anyone is new to our webinars. You don't need a microphone for the sessions. If you've got one, it'll just mute it automatically for you. You can't unmute yourself. So any questions that you have for me this morning, we're joined by Laura as well. Laura will be on hand in the background. So any questions or comments that you want to make, just you'll be able to access the questions panel by clicking the little speech bubble icon. Should expand the panel, you'll have access to the box at the bottom. So that's where you can type any comments, questions that you might have. It should be available to you throughout the session this morning. Remember to click send, otherwise we won't see them. And we'll you'll get a typed answer, which may be a straightforward answer. It may be a link to a Help Center article, or it may be myself that maybe I'll run an extra demo here and there. I'll just read it out, and we'll sort of maybe include that in the demos as we go. If we can't answer that, we might just encourage you to get in touch with our support team, and they'll take a bit more detail for you and resolve any query you might have. You can download a copy of today's slides. That's available throughout. Again, you'll have that little icon on the toolbar on the right if you want to go down that route. There's one full color version and one what we term the print-friendly version. Obviously, the detailed step-by-step guides, if you want that, they're available from our Help Center. Now, the session is being recorded. We always record the sessions, and a link to the recording will be included on your follow-up email. You'll receive that follow-up email round about now after we finish. It'll also include a link to our webinar registration page. So if you were interested in any of those management report sessions or the data management sessions that Laura mentioned in the video at the beginning, then just follow that link and you'll be able to get yourself registered for those. If you can't make it along, or you've missed any sessions, or maybe want a bit of a recap on something you've attended previously, there'll also be a link to our recordings page. So watch out for that one. Right, now in part 1, this morning's session, this is what we're going to be covering. So we're going to start with an introduction. I want to quickly mention about Sage 50 Accounts version 33. So there's an update for VAT on that, not applicable to everyone, but I'm going to run a poll in a moment and see who the update would be applicable to. We'll then run through the demonstration for today's session. So looking at steps 1 and 2 of the VAT Return Wizard, and hopefully filling you with a bit of confidence that maybe it's not as bad as you thought it was going to be. It's a really logical steps when it comes to generating your VAT return. And then just right at the end, I will open up, explain a little bit about further support, but then open up to any questions that we might have outstanding. So if we don't get a chance, we'll just drop you an email otherwise. But I'm going to pop a poll on your screen first of all. So if you don't mind, do get involved. I'll quickly pop that on if I can find the right option there. So just to give me a bit of an idea of the background. Which return do you generate? Is it a UK VAT return you generate? Are you based in the Republic of Ireland? Or maybe you're an accountant or just a business that actually you do both. You do a UK return and an Irish return. Barbara, just your question there, how do you know which you have? I'm assuming you're meaning the version there. Just go to help it about within your software. It should tell you the version in the top left corner. I'll just leave that for one more moment there. So loads of votes coming through there. And I'll quickly share the results as well, so you can see the divide on what we've got today. So still the majority running a UK return. Starting to see more and more of a percentage, starting to see that increasing a little bit for Republic of Ireland. So we've got about, what it says 38% of you voting there voting for that option. And nobody this time round has said you're doing both, which normally we get quite a small percentage, normally accountants based in Ireland, either Northern Ireland or Republic, where you might be dealing with companies in both regions. Now I'm going to quickly mention it anyway, find the right slide. Just get rid of that for a moment. So if we get back to the slides, and I just want to quickly mention version 33, just in case anyone hasn't attended, but maybe they're in that position. So when they get the recording, they'll see that. So Sage 50 Accounts version 33, a slight amendment for VAT in the way that the software works. Previously in version 33, if you were based in Ireland, when you went into your Sage software, you would have had to have your regional options set as Ireland. And similar, if you're based in the UK, when you access the software, you need to have your regional options set accordingly so that the correct, not only the correct currency will be presented to you, but also the correct VAT settings. When you go to run the VAT return, it gives you the right return. Now in version 33, it will actually look at the actual country of essentially in the business's address that you've got specified. So previously, if you were actually running both returns as separate companies, what's quite common is that either you're having to fiddle around with your Windows settings before you access the software, making sure it's right for the company that you're going into, but also commonly, people often run them on separate PCs. So Republic of Ireland-based businesses on one PC, UK businesses on the other. So not necessary anymore. If you're on version 33, it's absolutely fine. It'll just display the correct VAT options for you. So long overdue, that one, if you've ever been in that position. Right, let's get stuck into the webinar itself then. So we're going to look at the VAT return wizard. Now, obviously we've got that divide between UK and Ireland. So not a lot different. So the options as we run through them, you'll see pretty much the same. You've got the VAT option down the left on your navigation bar, and then you'll have a VAT return option on your toolbar at the top. So pretty much the same, the way that you're going to access your VAT return. So what we've done on these slides is I've put the screenshots side by side so you can see the subtle differences here and there. But we're going to go into the VAT ledger. We're going to click the VAT return option at the top of the screen. And then what it's going to do, it's going to launch that VAT return wizard. So we're going to run through tabs 1 and 2. Now, just before we get into the actual live demonstration, this is what essentially it's going to look like when you access that. So again, you've got 3 tabs along the top, doesn't matter about your region. The options down the left are pretty much the same. The only thing that's any different is the VAT return itself and the way it calculates. So obviously UK return, you've got 9 boxes. You've got a bit more complicated VAT when it comes to the Republic of Ireland. A lot more tax codes in use. So I think we just introduced a couple which I think they're in the T50 range because all the others are in use. So a lot more complicated if you are in Ireland with regard to which tax codes you use here and there. But anyway, we're going to run through step 1. So I'm going to switch across to my screen and we'll start running through that demo. Now I am going to be using a UK return today. So majority are voted for that one when I asked on the on that poll a few moments ago. So we'll stick with the UK return today, but the process is pretty much the same. Yes, the actual calculation of the VAT return is different and the number of boxes is different, but the process of running through to generate your VAT return, it's the same steps that you're going to follow. So we're going to access the VAT ledger. So just give that a click on the left there. And then you're going to click your VAT return option at the top. Now, if you do have anything highlighted, so say we go into the VAT ledger and we've got one highlighted, and you click VAT return, what it will do, it will bring up the VAT return that is actually listed. So it's a way that you can view an archive of a previous VAT return, that one. So just make sure you've got nothing highlighted. If you do have it highlighted and it won't let you just click on it to deselect it, just click on clear at the top. So anyway, we're going into the VAT ledger, and up the top there, we're going to click the VAT return icon on the toolbar, and that will launch the wizard for us. So as I mentioned, we've got the 3 tabs, and it's tabs 1 and 2 that we're looking at today. We're going to work through the various options to the point where we actually reconcile that VAT return. We agree the figures, and essentially we finish that process by reconciling. Now on step 1, you've got a number of tasks here. So you're just working through these options down the left. Now this wizard has been around for quite some time now, this VAT return wizard. You used to go into a copy of the VAT return and you'd pop the dates in at the top, and that was pretty much it. You would click calculate at the bottom, and then it would generate the return. And the idea of this wizard is it takes you through in much more manageable steps. So it encourages it to take a backup. That's option first sort of task. Now the reason for backing up at this stage is that if you reconcile, you can't undo that VAT return manually. There's no way of doing that. The only thing you can do to undo a VAT return if you actually reconcile it and flag those transactions is to actually restore a backup taken prior to doing that. So we'd always encourage you, when you come into this screen, take your backup. It's really easy to do. I'm sure you're more than familiar with backing up, so I'll just quickly run through it. It's really quick on mine anyway. So only thing I'm really going to back up at this stage is data files. I don't need to be including things like transaction attachments, reports, layouts, other attachments. I'll just leave the top one ticked only at this stage. If you want to include them all, you can, but normally on a regular basis, it would just be data files that you're backing up. Give it a file name, whatever you want to call it. See if I can type that in right today. So I'll just call it pre-VAT return. You might put dates and things like that in. If you've got multiple companies, you might include your company name, that type of thing. So you can easily identify that backup file and what point it would take you back to if needed. So enter your file name, choose your location. I'm just going to pop mine on my desktop. Obviously, if you need to change that, just click browse and choose where you want to store that backup file. So other than that, I just click OK. It does prompt you, would you like to check your data before you back up? So I'm going to click yes to that. Again, mine's incredibly quick. It's a tiny set of data I'm using today. So it's telling me no errors found, no warnings. I've got some comments. If I look at the comments, it just says dated in future. So actually, if I want to see the exact comment, I can see all of these transactions. So I've got loads of information entered for my upcoming webinars already. So I've got loads of future data transactions. Nothing to worry about, unless of course I look at that and I think, ooh, I've got something entered and maybe I've keyed it in wrong. Maybe I should have keyed it in December 2025 and I've actually keyed it in December 2026. So things like that, particularly when you roll over into a new calendar year. So have a look at that. If there's any errors, warnings, or comments, anything you're not sure about, you've got the help option up here. You will be able to access the A to Z or errors, warnings, and comments. It'll tell you exactly what that error, warning, or comment means, how you go about resolving that. Now, nothing to worry about in my case. I'll just close. It'll whiz through that backup there. Again, very quick because it's a tiny set of data. It tells me it's been successful. I just click OK. And that's it done. I'm ready to continue with the rest of the options. So backup, I'm sure you're familiar with that one. You'll be able to do that. Next, you come onto your date range. So this is where you're going to set your period for the VAT return that you want to run. So I'm going to run mine from October 2025 to the end of December 2025. You've got this little option here, use custom date range. Now, historically, prior to this wizard being introduced, it used to be in this format. And you get people keying in dates where they change the month and they think, oh, I'll do that to the 30th of that month, and just, mind slip, forget that there's 31 days in that month. So they'd run it to the 30th, which is why it will default to this whole month option to ensure that you include all days of that particular period. Confirms it here as well. So first, in this case, 1st of October 2025 to 31st of December 2025. Now this little tick box here, it creates loads and loads of questions. People get confused, still don't get it. People tick it every time, some people don't tick it every time, some people are unsure whether they should or shouldn't. So let me just try and explain what this does and why it's there. Now, for the vast majority, you will never ever tick this box. You will never do that. What it will do is when we come on to calculate the VAT return down here, when you calculate your VAT return, the software looks at obviously your date range, it looks at your VAT scheme, and it will look through to look for transactions that fall within this date range that are VATable under your VAT scheme. And by default, the ones that haven't yet been flagged as being reconciled, which you wouldn't expect to have any reconciled in the VAT period that you just generated. But you don't need to tick that box. Now, if I'm doing it for the current VAT period, it makes no difference whether I tick it or not. So you don't need to. The time it would be used is if you need to look back at an old VAT return period. And for whatever reason, just move this out of the way for a second. So in the background, you can see all these old VAT returns I've got saved where I've reconciled it. So let's say I wanted to run a VAT return for an old period that isn't listed there for some reason. What I can do is I can come in and I can set the relevant period. I can tick the box and it will try and calculate that return for me. If I'm looking back at an old period and I haven't ticked this box, it's going to think, well, when you click calculate, it's going to just try and find transactions that aren't yet reconciled. So chances are it wouldn't find anything. So just ignore this tick box. It's really for looking back at historic periods. Just leave it blank. We then come on to the VAT verification area. Now you're either going to have 8 or 7 checks in this area. It depends on the level of software you're on. I'll just quickly run through them so you can see what they are. So the idea of introducing the verification settings is to try and help you to identify maybe processing errors. So we're helping you to check that before you get to the point where you reconcile your VAT return and you submit it online and then you think, ooh, I forgot about this, or I've missed that, or actually I've just spotted a duplicate. That's what these verification settings will try and achieve for you. They'll try and identify that so you can get at that and correct it to improve the accuracy of your VAT return and hopefully give you a little bit more confidence that it's accurate. So there's a number of checks in here. They're all switched on by default. So first of all, we're going to look for possible duplicate transactions. So when we click calculate VAT return in a few minutes time, it's going to run these checks on the transactions based on whatever I've got ticked. And it will look at your transactions and say, right, well, that bank payment, is there another one with the same details? So it's going to look, and if it identifies it, it will. It'll pick it up for you and say, right, this is a possible duplicate. So when you're keying in some transactions, you got interrupted and thought, right, I'll just save where I'm up to. I'll try and pick up where I left off. And when you've picked up from where you left off, or at least you think you have, you've gone and you've keyed that information in again. Or someone else picked up from where and they've entered what you've already done. So it'll try and identify that for you. So similar transaction type, or same transaction type, same date, same nominal code, etc. Coming on to the missing entries. First one, identify invoices or credits which have not been updated. So is there an invoice or a credit note in the invoices and credits ledger which you've entered? It's dated within the VAT period that you specified or prior that hasn't yet been updated to the ledgers. If it's not updated to the ledgers, it will not be picked up on your VAT return. Again, just a nice little check there for you. It's nothing worse than someone contacting our support team and they say, right, well, I've submitted my VAT return and I've just realised there's this invoice here that I've entered, but actually I haven't declared that on the VAT return because I forgot to update it to the ledger. So that's exactly what this one will do for you. Now the next one, and this is why you're either going to have 8 checks or 7 checks. It relates to purchase orders. So you won't have this check if you're on the essentials level or the standard level of Sage 50 accounts. So purchase orders is something that's only available in the professional level. Now, there's a bit of a split on this one if you are on the professional level and you do use purchase orders. Purchase orders has a similar option, an update ledgers option, so similar to the invoices and credits ledger, where once a purchase order has been delivered to you, you can use the update ledgers to essentially enter the invoice against the supplier's account. Now that's what update ledgers will do. Quite often, now it's probably saying 50% of cases, when goods are delivered, rather than use update ledgers, people will just go straight into the supplier ledger and enter a batch invoice that way. So if you do that, I would take that tick out of that, otherwise it's going to identify all your purchase orders. But if you don't do that and you do use update ledgers, this will try and identify them for you where you've flagged them as being delivered, but you haven't yet used that update ledgers to enter the invoice onto the account yet. Next, we've got identify transactions with a VAT value where the tax code is not included on the VAT return. Bit unusual, this one. So have you entered a transaction, you've entered a tax code, and it's not ticked within the tax code settings to be included on the VAT return. It would maybe be common if you were switching VAT schemes. But have you gone into, I don't know, let's say you've gone to key in it's sort of a maybe a T1 transaction or a T, and you've keyed in T11 by mistake. Something along those lines where that T11 just by default isn't ticked to be included on your return. So is it something along those lines? Again, it's just checking it for you. You might probably find nothing. Now, in the other potential issues, you've got this check VAT values on transactions for possible errors. These rates will change depending if you're UK or Ireland. So let me just pop back to the slides just for a moment, just so you can see that. So we've got the UK settings down the left and Ireland on the right. So when you go in by default in Ireland, just the rates are a little bit different. That's it. The rest of it, settings, the way they're listed, exactly the same. So let's pop back to my desktop. We'll continue with that one. So what this check does, it looks at the VAT value on a transaction as it suggests for possible error. So is it within the sort of the boundaries there that you've set? Sort of the tolerance settings. So is that VAT value within 18 and 21% of the net value? So if you're in Ireland, is it within 21% or 24% of the net value? So have you just, I suppose if you were to do a processing error, so you've keyed in something like say £100 net, and then you've got across to the VAT column and you've keyed in £100 again. So have you just overwritten that? So it will identify that type of thing for you. Now you can amend those percentage settings if required. So if you want to narrow them down a little bit, you can. Next, we come on to identifying sales and purchase transactions not using your most common tax code. Now this is a bit of a strange check, this one. Most businesses are going to enter lots of transactions other than T1. But T1 is probably your most common used tax code is for standard VAT, whether that's in UK where it's 20% or Ireland where you're 23%. So that will identify transactions that do not use T1. Now chances are that might throw out loads and loads of queries on your transactions when we calculate the VAT return. If your main tax code is something else, you can just click on the drop down and select a different one if required. I'm just going to leave mine set to T1 though. Next, we've got a third check in this section is to identify journal transactions where the tax code is not selected as non-VATable. Now, to try and simplify this a little bit, I always think this is like a double negative, this one. So the majority of your journals that you post in your accounts will probably be classed as being non-VATable. So things like bank transfers, salary payments, those types of transactions would never be picked up on a VAT return and shouldn't be picked up on a VAT return. Even just journaling balances between nominal codes, you would expect it to be classed as being non-VATable. The non-VATable tax code in your software by default is T9. So this is going to identify any journals that you've posted where you haven't used T9, you've used some other tax code. Now, that might be a valid reason. Yeah, there will be occasions where maybe a line of a journal should use something like T1, for instance, but the vast majority will be T9. So this will just have a quick look for you as you're running through calculating your VAT return, and it will see, are there any journals that don't use that non-VATable tax code? The final one, not really applicable in the UK anymore. It's still listed, but it's more applicable to Ireland. Identify possible incorrect EC transactions. So that one where you've used an EC, or you've entered an EC transaction, you've used the appropriate tax code, it'll just ensure that the relevant information is entered within the customer or supplier record. So have you got the right country code, and also is the VAT registration number recorded within the relevant customer or supplier record? If not, it'll identify that for you just so that you can update that. So anyway, these are all ticked by default. It'll run them automatically, any that you've got ticked. So step one, preparing your VAT return. We've backed up, we've entered a date range, and we've gone through the settings. Normally that will probably take you a couple of minutes tops to complete step one. We're ready just to click calculate VAT return. Nothing on the VAT return on the right so far. So we click calculate VAT return, get a little progress bar. Just let that run through. What it's then going to do, it's going to prompt you. Now you'll either get this window that I've got, and it'll say, in this case, telling me how many transactions have been found for the VAT return. It's also telling me some transactions are unreconciled and before my VAT period. Now, if you get a window like this, it means it's found some what we term earlier unreconciled transactions. You might get a much smaller window where it just says X number of transactions have been found for this VAT return, and you get an OK button. But where we do have late entries, it's going to list them for us. Now, what do we mean by a late entry? It's basically when you last run your VAT return, obviously you would have reconciled it and flagged those transactions, or ticked them essentially to say, right, these have now been included on a VAT return. And what you've subsequently done is you've backdated some transactions, so just they weren't entered in time to be included on that return. Sometimes you find things like deletions and reversals, or just general late entries where you'd forgot to enter them. They'll be picked up in this way. So when we've calculated, it's looked at our date range, it's looked at our VAT scheme, and it's tried to identify any transactions in that sort of date range that haven't yet been included on a VAT return. So it's telling me it's found 148 transactions in total. But what it also does is it looks for these late entries. So it looks to see, right, are there any transactions which are categorized as being VATable, which haven't yet been included on a VAT return? So in this case, it's found 2 of them, and it's prompting me, do I want to include them? So in this case, I've got a BP transaction. Now I could print the list, I could send it to Excel if I want to close out and go away and maybe investigate those and are they right or not. So I've got a BP, it looks like for some petrol. So we're running, in this case, the VAT return period, it was from the beginning of October. Looks like this one just wasn't entered in time, so that's fine. And then we've got a purchase invoice, which was entered late in September as well, or dated quite late on in September. So again, I'll just include that. If you've got a great big list of these transactions, then you think, oh, all right, did I forget to run the VAT return last time round, or did I forget to reconcile it? But in this case, just a couple of transactions. Do I want to include them or not? So I get the include option or the ignore option. Barbara, if you can hear me, you were just asking, has the webinar stopped? No, the webinar's still going. If you're finding it's sort of stopped, as it were, just try leaving, come back in, or just give it a moment. You never know, it might just be buffering on your internet. If you've got anything else open that uses your internet connection as well, try closing that. So if you've got like your email open or you've got another browser open in the background, just try closing that. See if it might just improve the quality of the webinar for you. Should free up a bit of bandwidth maybe. So anyway, I'm going to include these two transactions. Now, what I can't do is I can't choose one. I can't highlight a transaction and choose to include or ignore it. Looks like I can, but I can't. It's basically, it's all or nothing with these two options. Do I want to include those two that are listed, or do I want to ignore them? So I'm going to include them. And that takes me on to step 2 of the VAT return wizard. So we've now got some figures on the right hand side where it's for whatever it's calculated. Right, just pop back to the slides just for a moment, just so you can see actually the difference between the UK and Ireland. It's minimal. Yeah, again, you've got the boxes on the right hand side and the way that the figures calculate, but the layout of the screen and the tasks which are listed down the left hand side, you've got exactly the same options. So we'll head back to the desktop and we'll continue working through. Right, so step 2, again, we've got a series of tasks to work through. We'll show you how you can sort of check your figures a little bit as well. There's the first one, the verification results. So those 7 or 8 checks that you're going to have. So in my case, on this set of data, it's found 31 potential queries. So I can view the results. Any that weren't selected, or that maybe where it's found nothing, so it hasn't found any duplicate transactions, you'll just get a tick against it. Any of the settings where it was ticked, but actually it's found something, you'll get this sort of amber triangle and you get a view button with that as well. So the idea of this is you'll work through it. So possible missing entries tells me I've got one invoice of credit which is not being updated. So gives me the detail as well. Now I can see this one's dated 2021. So is that something I should be worried about? Probably not in this instance. Probably just I've entered an invoice and maybe the customer's cancelled that before I've done anything, and I just haven't deleted it. So it's just a case of working through these, and is there any action that you need to take? So again, this one, 22 sales and purchase transactions, not using your most commonly used tax code. So again, I've got that list. Are they right or not? So list the tax codes. I did mention that one would throw out quite a few queries. So if your VAT return's picking up thousands of transactions, you probably find a lot more than what mine has found. So again, it might be a case you print the list, you send it to Excel, and then you go and work through it and just say, right, are they right or not? So just in case of working through them, do you need to correct anything? Obviously, you can close out the VAT return, go away and make your corrections, and then if necessary, come back through this VAT return wizard. So that's the verification results at the top. Next, we've got make adjustments. Now, chances are, again, an option probably that you will never use. You might use it if you're instructed by HMRC or the revenue that you need to make an adjustment to the VAT return. Maybe your accountant tells you need to. Other times you might need to use this option is if you're on likes of a partial exemption VAT scheme. So partial exemption not directly supported, and you just need to follow a bit of a process to calculate your VAT return and work out any adjustments. And to post those adjustments, this makes it really simple. So you've got your calculated figures, but let's say you're on partial adjustment, a partial exemption scheme, and for whatever reason, you need to adjust your box 1 figure. So we click make adjustments, and all we need to do is in the adjustment column, just click the relevant icon against the row where we need to make that adjustment. So let's say I needed to adjust the figure in box 1. I can click the little icon against the adjustment for box 1, pop in a reason, so pop in some text, and then you can pop in the adjustment. Now, adjustments can be positive or negative, and you can enter as many adjustments against each box as you want. Just a case of keying that in. When you're done, click save, and that will update your figures accordingly. So it makes it nice and easy. If you're on partial exemption as well, you'll probably have things like spreadsheets or other reports that maybe you want to keep tabs on, so you can add attachments to your VAT return. So just a case of add attachments, and then you can drag and drop your files onto that page, or you can browse and select them. It'll just attach a copy of that file to the VAT return itself. It doesn't submit it to HMRC or the revenue when you submit your VAT return. It's just for your reference purposes, that one. Next, we come on to the reports and also the VAT return itself. Now, if you're looking at your VAT return, and as you can probably imagine, loads of people do, and then they look at the figure and think, oh, that doesn't look right. Oh no, I'll ring support. So they ring our support team and they say, right, well, figure in box 1, a bit higher than I was expecting. How do you go about checking that? Well, you can generate reports. We'll come on to them in just a moment. But you can also use the drill down functionality, which is your option on screen here. Now, drill down, it refers to these icons. And what that means is it's drillable, so you can click it. So if we're looking at box 1 and we're thinking, right, we've got just over 7,500 there, where's that come from? We can click that box against box 1, and it brings up this little table for us. And what it does, it breaks that 7,500 down by transaction type by tax code. Sometimes that's enough just to jog people's memories and say, all right, well, could it be that? Have you entered a big credit note? You just forgot about it. Or have you been entering receipts or possibly even journals? Now, you might look at that and think, well, you might get to this point and think, well, actually, I wasn't expecting receipts at that tax code to be so high. Where does that come from? So I can highlight that value, that 539.71, I highlight it and double click it. And what that will do is it will bring up a list of transactions. Just give it a moment to load. So this is the breakdown of those bank receipts that use T1. Got all the values. Again, I can print this list, I can send it to Excel. So using the drill down it's a very common, well, we use it extensively when people contact us about that. We just say, right, if you thought about just when you're in step 2, just click the button. So I'm doing box 6 of the UK VAT return. And is there anything looks unusual there? Let's say it's that one. Highlight it, double click it. Well, it gives you a list of transactions. So nice and easy to do it on screen. The other way is to use your reports. Now, you've got reconciliation reports. A lot of you will probably print reports or even just view reports prior to coming into the VAT return. Barbara, you just mentioned what is receipts? Why is it different to credit notes? A receipt is basically a bank receipt, so money coming in where it hasn't been invoiced, but it's still classed as being VATable. Might be a cash sale, for instance. So when you go into bank accounts, use the bank receipts option, you show money coming into your business, and for whatever reason, you've categorized as being VATable. That's what that relates to. Similarly, if I was to drill down on, say, box 4, as well as invoices and credits, I would also see a payments option, for instance. So just quickly do that. So that would relate to bank payments that you might have posted. So it's not a payment against the invoice, it's actually a bank payment. Again, where it's a VATable transaction, but it doesn't relate to an actual supplier account, for instance. So coming back to reports, I mentioned some of you will probably generate, some people generate no reports, some people generate every single report they can think of. Reconciliation reports, it will load this window. If you expand reconciliation reports, it will list transaction analysis, but also it should list your VAT scheme that you set up for in Sage 50. Now, if you expand that one, your relevant VAT scheme folder, it will list the areas of the software that you might generate reports for. So for instance, if we choose bank, and it will list the relevant bank reports. So this would mean rather than you dot around all over the software prior to coming in to generate your VAT return, that you could just do them from within the VAT return itself. So customers, you can see, we can choose the daybook customer transactions report. When we run that report, we'll be able to say, right, do we want all transactions? Do we want it to pick up invoices only, credits only, invoices and credits? You got your choice with that report. So it's just a case if you do like to do loads of reports, they're in one area. That's all that's used for. The print VAT return option, it will give you a number of options there. Now, one of them is grayed out in my case, and it's the adjustments option. And it's because although I did go into the make adjustments area, I never actually entered one and saved it. So because there's no adjustments, there's nothing to include on the report. Similarly, if you didn't have any earlier unreconciled transactions, so those 2 transactions, if I chosen to ignore those, this one would be grayed out as well. Now I'm just going to tick the ones that are available to me. I'll preview them just so you can see them. Just okay that. Just give it a few moments to generate all of the reports, and I'll quickly show you what each of them include. Start with this one. So this was the first one, the first tick box, which is the VAT return itself. Now, if you're going to generate one report, it'll probably be this one. So it shows me sort of, you've got your transaction analysis here at the top. You've got your date range that you specified, also little options here for, did you include late entries? Did you include the earlier unreconciled? So that little checkbox at the start. Right, so it's got the values on there. So this is essentially, if you were going to do it manually, these are the figures that you would be declaring. It's what, if you do it online as well, these are the figures that will be submitted to HMRC or the revenue. So that's the first one, that's the VAT return itself. The second one was the summary report. This one's the equivalent of you going through your VAT return, and each of the boxes that you can sort of click the icon for to drill down on to display that table, that's essentially what this one will show. So for a UK return, I've got a 7-page report. I've got a table for each of the boxes that I could drill down on, basically. The detailed report is the next level. So where initially we clicked on the value on the VAT return, it drilled down to the table, and then I chose a value on the table and double clicked it to display the transactions. That's what this one shows. It's a fab report to have if you ever have a VAT inspection. So you're looking at your VAT return, you think, where does that figure come from? This report basically says, right, these are the transactions that make up that value. It's not necessarily saying you've entered them correctly, but what it's saying is when we've calculated the VAT return, we've calculated this figure, and these are the transactions that contribute towards that figure, basically. It can be quite a lengthy report, even for mine. That's, what was it, 168 transactions or so? It's telling me it's an 8-page report. So if your VAT returns thousands of transactions, you can probably imagine that's quite a bit going to be quite a bit more length on that report. Right, the next one was the earlier unreconciled transactions. So this is equivalent of the detailed report, but it's based around those 2 late entries that we included in the VAT return. So we've got that detail should we need it. So that bank payment that was included for the petrol, in our instance, we can see, right, it was included in box 4 and the VAT element was included in box 7. So we can see that on that report. And then the final report, basically it's the same as that detailed one where you've got all that list of transactions, but it splits it and groups it by department number. Just depends if you break your transactions down in that way. So let's say we've gone through step 2, we've looked at our VAT return, we've checked our figures as best we can, and we think, right, well, we agree them. So, right, what's the next step? The next step is to click the reconcile VAT return. Now, what this will do, I'll just click it now, and it's going to prompt you, flag transactions as VAT reconciled. So it's prompting you there. You cannot reverse this process. Make sure you've taken that backup beforehand. That's the only way you could undo that. So do you wish to continue? So I'm going to click yes. Progress bar while it does that. Very quick on mine. Again, it's that tiny set of data I've got. But that takes me on to step 3. And these tasks down the right, that's what we're going to cover in part 2 of the VAT return. We're covering that on Friday morning at 11. So if you haven't yet signed up for that one, please do so. Now, what's happened in the background there? Just very quickly. So on the VAT return window, we've got a new sort of VAT return archive listed. If we need to get back into that one, we can highlight it and just click VAT return, or we could have double clicked it. It would take us back to the VAT return wizard. So it's showing us the figures here that were agreed. We can still drill down if we need to get at that information. We can go all the way down to transaction level if we need to. Again, just give that a moment to load. There we go. We can still print our reports. So those 5 or 6 reports, depending on what's been included, you can still view those. So you don't necessarily need to print your VAT reports out. Obviously that detailed one was quite a lengthy one. So if you needed it, you could always go back and bring up the VAT return, and if needed, you can get at that report. You can view your verification results. And of course, you can view your adjustments. So have any put through at the time. But that brings us to the end of the part 1 VAT return webinar. So hopefully you're feeling a little bit more confident. If you've got any questions for me or Laura, please pop them in there now. I will try and pick them up before we finish the webinar. It does bring us towards the end of the demo though. So just want to quickly go back to the slides. I'll show you what, again, the sort of side-by-side comparison for the UK and Irish VAT returns. So step 3, you can see, yeah, you've got your VAT return, looks a little bit different, but the tasks down the right-hand side, pretty much the same. The one difference is when it comes to submitting, it needs to be done online via software under MTD if you're in the UK, and it's a slightly different process if you are based in Ireland. But we'll be running through that in a bit more detail in part 2 of the VAT return webinar series. Any final questions? If you want to quickly pop them in there, we'll try and pick them up in just a moment. Remember, you can download that handout. You'll also receive that follow-up email in around about an hour's time. It will include a link to today's recording. So if you want a bit of a recap, or maybe you want to share it with your colleagues, it'll include a link so you can register for our upcoming webinars, including Friday's part 2. And also it'll include a link to our recordings page. Loads of fab information available from our help center. We split that by region, just a case of navigating to it. So head along to sage.co.uk/help, or just when you're in your software, you can just press F1 to access that as well. Webinars, loads coming up. Our timetable currently runs up to the end of Feb. So if you are interested, take a look, get yourself registered. A couple of other things to quickly mention. Community Hub. Our Community Hub, if you've not come across that before, it's our online forum for our software. You've got an area specifically for Sage 50 accounts. Now, it's where you can get advice, you can ask questions, you can give advice and answer questions. It's all about a community spirit, I suppose, that one. It tends to be primarily used for announcements, what's happening, and also for people, for end users to ask questions. But if you want to get involved and offer advice or answer questions, you can do that. You do need to join it. It's free to join. Just head along to communityhub.sage.com. Last year, there was over, or just shy of 9,000 accounts professionals connected and supported each other via the hub. So if you are interested, you just want to take a look, just head along to that link, via that link there. That's included on the handout. Finally, just before I open up to questions myself, slight error on that reminder there. The reminder should say the webinar is on Friday at 11 AM. But let me quickly thank you for coming along today. I hope you've enjoyed it, you found it useful. Some of you will go away thinking, well, I knew that. Nothing new. Great. Your knowledge is right up there. Others where maybe you've never run a VAT return before, or you've only done it a handful of times, hopefully it's boosted your confidence. You've got a better understanding of it now. Whatever your thoughts, let us know. There'll be a little survey pop up as you leave. If you can take a minute to complete that, it'd be greatly appreciated. Watch out for your follow-up email, and that will be with you in round about an hour's time. Right, quick question from, I'm going to open up the questions now. So quick question from Barbara. Barbara's saying, every month my deleted invoices confuse me on the report. Can you explain what shows up? Right, so if you've got an invoice and let's say it hasn't been included on a VAT return yet, and you go in and you delete it, that's fine. It would just delete that transaction. But let's say it has been included on a VAT return, so you've declared the VAT from that invoice. If you go and make a change to that invoice, essentially that VAT return needs to change as well. So if you amend what we term a critical field when a transaction is VAT reconciled, what it will do is it will post a reversing transaction, and it will then post a correct transaction. So that reversing transaction to cancel out the original invoice, so it will post a credit note for it, equal and opposite values, same date as the original, but then it will post a new invoice against the customer's account for whatever you've wanted the updated details to be. Both the deletion, the reversal as it were, and the new transaction, they will be included on your next VAT return. So it very much depends on the status of the transaction. If it's an invoice that you've entered and that's been reconciled, so it's been included on a VAT return, and you just go in and say, right, actually I need to delete this, it's going to reverse it for you. It needs to do that too, and that reversal will be picked up on your next VAT return. So we've got some recorded webinars on that type of thing. So you'll find it in the corrections option. We've just finished running the corrections series. So if you need to see that, have a look at our recordings page. Link will be included on your follow-up email. Mary, I'll get back to you about your query with regard to the tax code. I think your query with being I'm expecting you to be based in Ireland there. I think it's possibly one of the two new tax codes that's been added in version 33, but otherwise you can add that in manually. But I'll double check that, Mary, and I'll get back to you once I've had a chance to check that. Pauline, similar question for yourself. You mentioned you're in Republic. What tax code do you use? Again, I'll look into that one and I'll drop you an email on that one. Give me a chance to look that up. I'm not off the top of my head. I'm not 100% on those, so I'll double check them and drop you an email. Right, we'll end the webinar just at that point. Many thanks for coming along. Apologies for the slight overrun. Obviously, it just depends how many questions we get here and then if we need to veer off. But hopefully, I'll see you on session 2 on Friday morning at 11. Not tomorrow, on Friday. Okay, see you then.